Housekeeper wakes up in Billionaire's bed. What he did next will inspire 1,000,000 hearts. The storm raged outside, a deafening orchestra of thunder and rain pounding against the walls of the lavish Los Angeles mansion. Maria huddled in the entryway, drenched and disoriented. A flicker of lightning illuminated a once welcoming space, now ominous in its splendor. She had rushed in seeking refuge, unaware that the billionaire who owned this estate, Robert, was gone. Sitting on a plush chair, she let the exhaustion wash over her. This job as a housekeeper barely paid her bills, but it was the only lifeline for her young daughter, Sophia. All Maria had were her humble earnings and the hope for a better life. Hours later, she awoke to oppressive silence, her surroundings cloaked in an eerie darkness. Confusion gripped her as she found herself in an extravagant bed, the kind she had only ever seen in magazines. Panic gripped her chest as she realized the turn her fate had taken. How did she get here? Her heart raced, the shadows of the room feeling like specters lurking on the edges of her consciousness. Thoughts spiraled as she recalled her everyday struggles, bills piled high, Sophia's innocent dreams of a trip to Disneyland fading into the background of their reality. Here, in this gilded cage, vulnerability engulfed her. What if Robert returned? What would he think of her? Before she could dissect those fears, the storm outside intensified, hammering against the roof. Maria felt a swell of urgency. She had to leave, had to finish her work before anyone noticed her absence. With careful bravado, she slipped out of the bedroom, determined to blend into the routines of the mansion as if nothing at all had changed. As she dusted along the ornate frames and organized plush furnishings, Maria lost herself in chores. Each task felt like a distraction, a way to stave off the fear gnawing at her insides. She had always been resilient, but amidst these displays of wealth, uncertainty warped her sense of self. Would she ever be able to protect Sophia from the world she struggled against? Or did stepping into this billionaire's life mean everything she had fought for was slipping away? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, Maria caught a glimpse of movement. Robert stood in a shadowy doorway, his expression unreadable. Their worlds were on opposite ends of an unforgiving spectrum. As their eyes met, she felt a trembling connection and understanding that flourished among their stark differences and hardship, but almost immediately, the stillness shattered. News of catastrophe struck Robert's business. The stock value plummeted, unraveling years of success and trailing a threat that hung like a dark cloud above them. Each conversation around her morphed into whispers and blame, his peers harsh and unforgiving. Maria felt the weight of her instincts pulling her toward action. She couldn't remain just a housekeeper anymore. Would she be able to articulate the compassion that disappeared beneath the billionaire's wealth? As she prepared to confront this challenge, doubt crept in. Could she truly make a difference in a world unsympathetic to struggle? Every heartbeat thundered like the storm outside, and in the merging chaos of two disparate lives, the question loomed: could she help him find his worth without losing hers? The tension in the mansion swelled and matched the storm outside. Each thunderclap echoed her apprehension as Maria moved through the vast corridors, contemplating the path ahead. She had seen Robert through his confident facade, but now, with the weight of his failures pressing down on him, she wondered if she could navigate the complexities of approaching him. After all, she too was familiar with the shadows of doubt. As he paced the opulent sitting room, Robert's distress was palpable. The luxurious decor, once seemingly magnifying his grandeur, now felt like a gilded prison. Maria's instincts urged her closer. Could she find words that offered solace, that transformed her position from a mere employee to a confidant? This was uncharted territory, and with every step she took toward him, a cocktail of fear and determination churned in her gut. Maria, he acknowledged, pausing mid-stride. His voice was laden with stress, and it added an unexpected vulnerability to his demeanor. The billionaire who commanded boardrooms now appeared like a man stripped of his power. "I didn't expect to find you here." For a brief moment, she felt a spark of empowerment. Here was her chance to breach the divide between their worlds. But how to convey this? Words often escaped her in moments of importance. As thunder rumbled, she steadied her breath. "Mr. Robert," Maria began, her voice firm, "I know this is a difficult time for you." His eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering for just an instant. Perhaps he hadn't anticipated empathy from the help. She pressed onward, emboldened by the connection they had forged the previous night in their brief encounter. "I've seen people weather storms before. Sometimes they need help to weather the aftermath." His lips tightened into a thin line, grappling with the sting of her words that carried more depth than she intended. "Weathering the aftermath. How does someone like you know about that?" The question cut deeper than she anticipated. She took a step closer, emboldened by the frailty she saw in him. "I've learned to find light in dark times. I have a daughter who sees magic in the simplest things, the kind of hope that can't be extinguished by hardship. Yet here you are, a man of power, struggling to reclaim something that might feel lost." A flicker of recognition crossed Robert's face, a glimmer of understanding paired with the unwilling acceptance of his reality. She was right. In moments of despair, human connection held more strength than wealth could ever command. It sparked an unexpected recognition in him that she could offer something he desperately needed. "How do you do it?" he finally asked, the layers of his numerous questions beginning to peel back. "How do you hold on to hope when everything seems to be collapsing around you?" Maria hesitated, torn between her instinct to comfort him and the realization that revealing too much could leave her vulnerable. "I adapt. I find ways to keep going. Even in storms." In that dimly lit room, a bridge formed. She tightened her resolve. Perhaps if she shared her experiences, her struggles, her triumphs, she could encourage him to confront his own demons. Flashes of her life played in her mind, the moments she had faced adversity and emerged stronger. The vulnerability of sharing her story filled the air with intimacy, and slowly, Robert's walls began to crumble. Yet, even as that connection built, Maria recognized a troubling truth: the changes she envisioned required audacity to tear down her own fears. This journey could turn into something monumental for both of them. As the storm's winds howled outside, Maria felt a growing sense of purpose. The path ahead held uncertainty, filled with chances to bring light to the darkness overshadowing them both. She had to confront her fear of inadequacy and challenge her assumptions about wealth and power. "Tomorrow," Maria said, her voice unwavering, "you and I will face this together. You don't have to carry that burden alone." Robert's eyes searched hers, and for the first time, she saw a flicker of hope within him, buried beneath layers of discontent. He nodded subtly, an alignment kindling between their disparate lives. But just as the ember of possibility sparked, Maria felt a shiver run down her spine. The reality of what lay ahead loomed large. Tomorrow's conversation would determine their fates, but Maria realized, with dawning clarity, that not only could she help him find redemption, but she might also discover her own purpose along the way. The night deepened, and as she withdrew to the background of the vast mansion, uncertainty clung to her like fog. The moment of truth arrived. Would she have the courage to lead, or would she retreat into the shadows once more? As sunlight crept through the grand windows, Maria awoke to the remnants of night coiling in her mind. The storm had subsided, leaving a fragile tranquility that belied the turbulence of the day ahead. Today would mark a pivotal shift not only for Robert but for herself. Her heart echoed with a mixture of anticipation and dread, each beat reminding her of the courage required to face the unknown. She prepared for her morning routine with a newfound determination. The warmth of the sunlight seemed to fill her with energy, illuminating the shadows of self-doubt that had clung to her for too long. As she stood in front of the mirror, she examined her reflection, searching for the strength that had flickered to life the night before. Was she truly capable of being a guiding force in Robert's life? The mansion that had felt like a gilded prison just moments ago now appeared as a haven of potential. Each polished surface reflected not only light but also the possibility of transformation. She set to work tidying the expansive spaces, her mind whirring with strategies on how to approach their conversation. Maria remembered her daughter's innocent wisdom, finding beauty in the simple moments. Those lessons were her foundation, and today they would drive her to seize the moment. As the morning blended into afternoon, Maria felt an urgency pulsing through her veins. She chose her words carefully, practicing in her mind the delicate balance of honesty and encouragement that would foster Robert's trust. When she finally crossed the threshold into the sitting room, she discovered Robert standing by the window, lost in thought. The soft light outline defined his silhouette, but she could see the shadows lurking beneath his skin. "Good morning, Mr. Robert," she greeted, her words calm yet resolute. He turned, his expression softening but still heavy with uncertainty. "Maria," he started, then hesitated, searching for the right words. "Whatever you're about to say, remember we're in this together," she encouraged, sensing the vulnerable space between them. "You don't have to bear the weight alone." His gaze deepened as her words settled. "I've always handled big things, small things on my own." "Maybe that's part of the problem," she interjected gently. "You're not just a confident leader in a boardroom, you're human. It's okay to reach out for help. We all need it at different points in our lives." Robert's expression flickered, and she saw the internal battle he waged. She felt a surge of empathy, knowing all that he carried. His success had become a prison, locking him away from his own vulnerabilities. "I fear that if I show any weakness, I'll lose everything I've built." "And what will you lose if you don't allow yourself to express those fears? You're teetering on the edge of despair. But confronting it could bring you clarity." The walls around him seemed to tighten for a heartbeat, but he listened. Maria pressed on, sharing the essence of her own struggles, the moments of self-doubt, the unrelenting fear of inadequacy amplified by society's expectations. Each shared story placed a brick in the bridge they were constructing together. In that tense exchange, something remarkable began to shift. Robert leaned forward, raw honesty coloring his features. "I've sacrificed intimacy for success. I thought strength lay in solitude, but now." Maria nodded, sensing the release of pent-up emotion. "Strength is also in connection with others and, most importantly, with yourself. It's time to redefine success." Something profound transformed in the air, and she saw the burden lift slightly from his shoulders. Hope crept into Robert's expression. They stood on the brink of rediscovery, but uncertainty still hovered like morning mist. "Let us take it step by step," he said, his confidence stirring anew. "What do you suggest?" Maria's pulse quickened at his willingness to engage. "First, be open not just with me, but also with yourself. Acknowledge your fears and view them not as limitations but as opportunities to redefine your purpose. And I will be by your side, helping you navigate that, too." As they mapped out their first steps together, anticipation surged within her. This was not merely about Robert's journey, it was a discovery of her own potential, her ability to influence and lead. Yet, as the plan took shape, an unsettling thought struck her. Would her own past shadows rise to thwart her newfound resolve? Would she crumble under the weight of anticipating failure, or would she rise to the challenge? The conversation hung in the air, teetering between hope and trepidation. Maria felt the pulse of potential invigorating her, and yet, a whisper of doubt dared to emerge. Would she truly abandon the safety of shadows for the light of her aspirations? The moment of clarity shimmered just out of reach, leaving her precariously balanced on the edge. What awaited them could either shore up this fragile connection or unravel completely. Maria stood in the bright room, the sunlight now a persistent companion as the shadows of doubt writhed within her heart. She was certain the day's plans would mark a transformation for Robert, but she had begun to realize that the change would ripple through her life as well. With Robert stepping out of his fortified walls, a wave of responsibility washed over her. The heaviness in her chest had morphed into energy, a call to action, and she took a deep breath, centering herself. What she felt wasn't merely empathy, it was an awakening of her own ambitions. If she was to support him, it meant digging deep into her well of experiences and lessons. She had to recognize the strength she frequently overlooked within herself. As they delved into logistics, work schedules, personal goals, and the milestones they wished to achieve together, Maria felt herself morphing into a strategist, purposefully plotting each step with a blend of insight and understanding. During this conversation, she reflected on her own life choices. Professional limitations had shackled her, but perhaps she decrafted those chains herself. It was time to reshape her reality, not just for Robert but for her own sake. Building connections means cultivating paths, making trade-offs, she suggested, her voice infused with determination. What if we developed a schedule of shared activities to challenge our comfort zones? Maybe volunteer some time together, or take a class on something completely foreign to us. And as she spoke, she felt the thrill of possibility expel some of her fears. Her eyes sparkled at the thoughts of shared experiences, and she sensed Robert's intrigue. It was an innovative approach to vulnerability. They could learn together. Robert nodded slowly, absorbing her words. Okay, I can see the value in that. Maybe there is something to face together. His eyes brightened, a flicker of resolve igniting. But first, I suppose I need to tackle my own habits that keep me on this lonely path. Maria's heart swelled as a sense of pride nudged at her. In guiding Robert, she was also nudging herself forward, allowing her voice to emerge louder than it had been in years. With every exchange, she could feel the layers of her own identity unfurling. She was not simply the caretaker now, but a companion in growth. However, doubts whispered from the corners of her mind, that familiar echo of, what if? Was she capable of fostering change, both in Robert and in herself? The path would demand that she not just embrace the light but acknowledge her own shadows. What past scars would she be forced to confront? And would that confrontation propel her further or shatter her newfound courage? As they put their ideas into motion, a shift began to occur. Robert's laughter mingled with Maria's, sounds that echoed delight yet remained laced with tension. Could they truly sustain this delicate balance? Their focus shifted toward preparations for the upcoming week, each task an opportunity to fortify their budding partnership. Maria found herself smiling, each detail transformed into signs of deepening intimacy. Yet, in the glimmer of connection, fear lingered just beneath her skin, like a tension waiting to break, and then came the text that jolted her back to reality, a specific invitation from a longtime acquaintance, one that posed a challenge she had avoided for years. It was an opportunity to showcase her culinary talents at a high-profile charity event. The chance for recognition was glaring, but so was the anxiety that flared within her. What if she failed? Torn between the comfort of Robert's evolving journey and a personal risk, Maria felt the weight of decision pressing against her chest. Stepping into the light required an honest confrontation of her fears, yet uncertainty clung to her like a second skin. Would this opportunity embolden her or unravel everything she sought to build? The air grew thick with potential as she stared at her phone, her hand hovering over the keyboard. Did she have the courage to respond? Would she let Robert's journey anchor her in her own resurgence, or would she remain complacent, weighed down by the shackles of self-doubt? In that moment, Maria realized she stood at the precipice of a significant personal turning point, and with her heart pounding, she prepared to make a choice that could define the future, both for herself and Robert. Would she dare to reclaim her aspirations amidst the rising tide of uncertainty? The decision loomed, waiting to be grasped, as both of their destinies intertwined in ways they had yet to fathom. In this burgeoning partnership, would they each find the strength to rewrite the narrative of their lives? Maria stared at her phone, the words on the screen blending into an indistinct smear of anxiety and hope. The invitation blinked like a lighthouse in a storm, and she could feel the waves of self-doubt crashing against her resolve. She had envisioned her culinary skills as a secret treasure, but now they felt like a double-edged sword, one that could either liberate her or cut deeply into the fabric of her carefully stitched identity. What would it mean to step into the spotlight? To allow others to see her not just as the supportive partner of Robert, but as someone with her own passions and talents. The allure of recognition throbbed like an unhealed wound, a reminder of the dreams she de-shelved away for too long. This wasn't merely a cooking event, it was an intersection of her past and future, dangling precariously before her. She was about to type a response when an unexpected sound broke the silence. Robert's voice calling from the other room, animated and light. It was a stark contrast to the swirling tumult within her. His laughter intermingled with the clatter of pots and pans, a kitchen orchestra setting a rhythm she longed to join. This joyful distraction was exactly what Maria needed to refocus, yet it felt like a tether holding her back from exploring her professional potential. "Maria." He called again, the warmth in his tone echoing a sense of partnership she had craved. It stirred something deep within her, the potential for a shared life, but also the realization that she had to negotiate her own ambitions. Could she blend her aspirations into their growing bond without fracturing it? Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the kitchen, her heart racing with anticipation and trepidation. The sight of Robert, casually chopping vegetables, was a reminder of how far he had come, but it was also a call to her own evolution. She decided to bring up the opportunity while they worked together. "Hey, I got this invitation," she said, moving closer. "To showcase my cooking at a charity event." The words felt both exhilarating and terrifying, tumbling out of her mouth before she could second-guess herself. Robert looked up, eyebrows raised in surprise. "That sounds amazing. Why haven't you told me about this sooner?" She shrugged, the underlying insecurities bubbling forth. "I've always kept it as a side passion, you know. I'm not sure I'm ready for that. What if I fail? Or," he countered, his expression turning serious, "what if you shine? You're incredible in the kitchen, Maria. You deserve to share that with the world." As Robert spoke, Maria could see him pushing past his own barriers. He was shedding layers of resistance, and it ignited a spark within her. Maybe this was what they both needed, a commitment to leap into the unknown together, confronting fears on parallel paths. The conversation shifted, flour and seasoning swirling around them as they managed a spontaneous meal, laughter drowning out doubts. Each chop, each sprinkle of herbs became a metaphor for growth, and she felt herself breathing in the aroma not just of food, but of possibility. "But what if I lose my footing?" Maria pondered aloud, the question heavy with vulnerability. Robert paused, his hands stilled. "You won't know until you try. Besides, it's not about perfection, it's about progress. I'm beginning to learn that." His sincerity rooted her in the moment, two imperfect beings standing on the brink of their respective journeys. In that shared space, she felt a tide of determination rising. The help of each other was becoming a catalyst for transformation. Robert's success was awakening the dreamer in her. Maria's hand returned to her phone, nerves entangled with resolve as she finally began typing a response to the invitation, each letter forming a declaration of intent. In that single act, she was not just reaching out to seize an opportunity, she was backing herself for the first time. Yet, as she finished typing, another fear slithered into her mind. What if she made the wrong decision? What if the expectations were too much? The stakes seemed higher with each passing second. Would an ambition realized turn into a distraction or lead to a deeper understanding of her own worth? The decision loomed larger than before, breathing down her neck. In that pivotal moment, she could feel the weight of the unknown ready to bear down on her, forcing her to confront it head-on. Would this leap into the culinary spotlight prove to be the launch pad she desperately needed, or would it risk shattering everything she had started to build? As she hesitated, finger poised over send, the tension in the room coiled tighter, and she realized she held more than just an opportunity in her hands. She held the power to redefine her narrative altogether. The choices ahead swirled in her mind, each bringing her a step closer to the woman she longed to become. Would Maria choose to step out of the shadows with courage, or would she remain a spectator in her own life, letting the fear of failure anchor her down? A moment of clarity washed over her just as she pressed the button, ready to embrace whatever came next. Would she find the strength to navigate this new chapter that was unfolding before her, both for herself and for Robert? Maria paced the kitchen, her heart racing from the adrenaline of sending the message. A sense of both relief and uncertainty washed over her, but that quickly morphed into a sharp awareness of what lay ahead. It wasn't just about her cooking anymore, it was a test of everything she had been wrestling with internally: the courage to face the perceptions of others, including her own. The aroma of garlic and tomatoes wafted around her. She gazed at Robert, who was now completely immersed in his task, oblivious to her internal turmoil. There was a time when she would have let doubt control her, but now the crackling energy of potential filled the space between them. She was finally ready to own her story, but what context would that story take? "Do you think I'm really ready for this?" she asked, crossing her arms defensively. Robert, wiping his hands on a towel, looked up with an encouraging smile. "You made that risotto last week from scratch. It was amazing. You've been ready, you just didn't want to believe it." "But that was in the comfort of our home, where everything feels secure," she countered, frustration creeping into her voice. "What if I freeze under pressure? What if I can't deliver?" "The truth is," he began, stepping closer, "you might stumble. And that's okay. It's not about perfection, it's about putting yourself out there. Don't let the fear of falling keep you from running." Her thoughts swirled. His words resonated, but they also made her realize how distant she felt from her true ambitions. She wasn't just afraid of the kitchen, she was afraid of the judgment, the scrutiny, the fortified wall that had kept her from asserting her identity beyond Robert's partner. Was she ready to be a culinary artist and not just a supporting actress in someone else's story? The hands of the clock on the wall ticked heavy in the silence. She often wondered how long she would allow herself to stay in this liminal space, oscillating between dreams and reality. Her inclination had always been to retreat when faced with discomfort. Yet, here she stood, embodied by the sheer act of pressing send. What she feared most was actually the chaos of emotion that came with taking that leap, but this moment hinted at her emerging self. Just as the exhilaration began to settle, Maria felt a surge of trepidation again. There were complexities beyond cooking. The simple act of sharing her ambition with the world meant inviting feedback. Would her friends cheer her on, or would they question why she hadn't taken the plunge sooner? Would they expect her to fail? The thought gnawed at her, and for a moment, her stomach twisted. "Maria," Robert redirected her attention, grounding her with his calm presence. "What is holding you back the most? Honestly." The question hung in the air. She took a deep breath. It wasn't the culinary stage or the audience that troubled her, it was her own harsh self-critique, the brilliant yet debilitating filter through which she often viewed her capabilities. "I'm scared of what happens if I really put myself out there and I'm not enough." "Then you work with what you learn. You grow." His assurance felt like a lifeline, yet Maria couldn't dismiss the fragments of uncertainty that lingered. "But I don't want to be seen as just another wannabe chef," she interjected. "What if everyone sees me as an imposter?" "Imposter? No way. We've all been there. It's called beginning. It's messy, it's scary, and it's real," he reassured her, a warmth radiating from him that countered her winter of self-doubt. The kitchen absorbed their candid emotions, the potential chill of fear warming into the steam of ambition rising from the stove. Perhaps she needed to shift her perception entirely. Instead of viewing this opportunity as a stage invitation, she could see it as a chance to engage with her art, her passion, her identity. Realizations began to crystallize. She didn't have to cater to anyone's expectations except her own. Each chop of vegetables and each simmering pot spoke to her growth, allowing her to weave her story into her creations. As they continued preparing dinner, a familiar energy hummed beneath her skin. She could feel that surge of determination coming back, brightening her resolve. What if she dedicated herself not to the cooking alone, but also to the journey of becoming the woman she aspired to be? With renewed clarity, she began to pen her thoughts in a notebook left open on the counter, mapping out not just recipes but also snippets of her aspirations and her fears, transforming her uncertainties into concrete goals. Yet in her mind, the specter of those initial fears loomed. Could she genuinely emerge triumphant from this new chapter? The clock loomed, and she needed to strategize. Her path to self-discovery was now more pronounced and pressing than ever. She could not ignore the thrill or the anxiety. The melody of her ambitions needed to resonate loud enough to drown out any lingering doubt. but as thoughts flowed onto the page, her pen stuttered over the next line, caught in a moment of paradox. Every line reflected a possibility, but it also cast shadows of fear. Would she have the courage to face what lay ahead? The tension hung palpably as she closed her notebook, the realization dawning that every decision she made from here would shape the narrative of her life. If only she could embrace herself as she had begun to embrace her passion for cooking, but the pressing question loomed overhead: would she have the courage to step fully into that identity? Could she chart her own course, or would she allow fear to dictate her tale once again? What awaited her on the other side of this leap into the unknown? The next morning, the bright sunlight splashed through the kitchen window, illuminating the notes strewn across the counter. Maria's heart beat steadily, but there was a quiet storm brewing within her. She realized that yesterday's clarity had shifted overnight. With thoughts of culinary aspirations clashing with anxiety, she felt no less determined but equally agitated, like a simmering pot waiting to boil over. After a quick breakfast, she decided to take a walk to clear her mind. Each step through the neighborhood felt symbolic, each footfall echoing her commitment to authenticity. She noticed the small coffee shop on the corner, a place where aspiring artists often gathered to exchange ideas. It had always stirred a longing within her, an unfulfilled desire to be part of that community of creators who dared to express themselves. But there, standing outside, she hesitated. What if they could see her facade, the self-doubt she hadn't quite shaken off? The thought clawed at her gut, yet a more assertive voice urged her forward. She walked in, the scent of brewed coffee mingling with the sound of soft chatter, feeling like the very embodiment of her ambitions. As she navigated her way to a small corner table, Maria overheard snippets of conversation, someone nervously sharing their artwork, another discussing an upcoming performance. Her anxiety shifted from fear to curiosity. Maybe sharing herself wasn't about being perfect, but merely being present in the moment, engaging with others who were on their own journeys. Determined to push through the discomfort, she pulled out her notebook. Writing had always felt like a sacred act, a way to untangle thoughts swirling in her head. But instead of focusing solely on her culinary ambitions, she began to explore her feelings about self-doubt. Why had she allowed herself to be confined to the role of partner for so long? As the ink flowed, she recalled a moment from college when she lived in the kitchen, igniting her passion for cooking. The thrill of creating a dish from nothing was intoxicating, yet somewhere along the way, that exhilaration had dulled. Was it simply the weight of societal expectations that brought about her hesitation? "Excuse me," a voice interrupted her thoughts. A woman in a bright dress stood at her table, holding a steaming latte. "I couldn't help but notice your writing. Are you a writer?" Maria blinked, caught off guard. No, I'm working things out." The woman smiled warmly. "That's where it starts. I'm an author. I keep my journal everywhere. It's my way of crafting stories from my experiences. You should join our writers group." Maria's heart fluttered with excitement and fear. A writers group? It was a leap, a substantial one. She hesitated again, replaying a scene in her mind: feedback, opinions, potential criticism. But wasn't this an opportunity to step further into her own narrative, a chance to own her voice instead of hiding behind it? "Maybe," she replied, the word hanging on her lips, alluring yet daunting. "Why not? You've got something to say. Why not share it?" The woman's enthusiasm melted away some of Maria's trepidation. She felt vulnerable yet oddly empowered, standing on the precipice of her own potential. As the conversation continued, Maria's defenses began to lower. Each interaction offered a chance to voice her fears and desires, to expand beyond herself. She suddenly realized the act of merely sharing her thoughts was a revolutionary step toward her goal, rather than a mere confession of doubt. After they exchanged contact information and the woman left, a wave of excitement coursed through her. This was no longer just about cooking, it was about living authentically, sharing her journey with others who felt the same push and pull of ambition. But as she contemplated the invitation to the writers' group, doubt crept back in, whispering insidious reminders of her insecurities. What if she wasn't good enough? Those thoughts nearly drowned out the thrill of possibility, yet she suddenly felt resolved. The choice lay in her hands to silence the narrative that had haunted her for so long. Maria gathered her belongings, determination settling in her spirit as she exited the café, clutching her notebook like a shield. What awaited her at the writers' group could very well be the push she needed to shatter the walls she'd built around her dreams. The thought was intoxicating, yet frightening. Would she seize the opportunity to reshape her identity, or would she retreat once again into the shadows of self-doubt? As she stepped outside, tethered by the gravity of the moment, she felt the air shift around her. It was time to confront the inner critic that had stifled her for far too long. With each step forward, she whispered to herself, maybe it's time to become more than just a possibility. The question loomed larger than ever: would she finally embrace her authentic self, and what revelations awaited her in this new chapter of discovery? Maria's heart raced with every step as she made her way toward the writers' group. The uncertainty weighed heavily on her, a mix of anticipation and dread coursing through her. Was she truly ready to step into a space where vulnerability was not just welcomed but essential? Upon arrival, she stood at the entrance of the quaint community center, its walls adorned with art by local talents. The familiar scent of coffee wafted through the air, mingling with the sound of laughter and critical discussions. As she took a deep breath, her mind fluttered with the possibility of acceptance versus the fear of exposure. The room felt alive, filled with passionate individuals who shared the pursuit of expression. Each face carried a story, a history of struggle and triumph that Maria could sense even from a distance. She felt invisible yet intricately connected to each of them. It was a paradox that struck her at her core. As she entered, she noticed a small group gathered in a circle, deep in conversation. Friendly faces turned toward her, inviting her to join their orbit. "Hey there. Are you new?" one woman asked, her voice absolute warmth. Yeah. "I'm Maria," she stammered, hoping her voice conveyed more confidence than she felt. "Welcome. We're just discussing our latest writing prompts. Have you written anything recently?" The inquiry made her stomach churn. The question felt like a spotlight, illuminating her insecurities. "I mostly jot down my thoughts," she admitted, her words tasting like defeat. "Perfect. We love that here. Everyone has their own style. Just be yourself," said another member, a man with a friendly disposition. Maria's defenses lowered as they continued to share their own struggles and beginnings. Each person spoke of their fears and failures, painting vivid pictures of growth that stemmed from their willingness to be authentic. As they ventured into discussion, Maria realized they were not waiting for perfection, they craved raw honesty, the essence of creative expression. One by one, they took turns reading snippets of their work. Maria listened intently, finding herself hanging on their every word. Some shared tales of heartbreak, others of adventure, but all resonated with bewildering truths she desperately wanted to voice. As the narratives unfolded, her own thoughts began to simmer, waiting for their time to escape. When the circle turned to her, an electric tension filled the air. "What do you have to share with us, Maria?" a voice chimed, pulling her back from the depths of her thoughts. "Honestly, I'm still working things out mostly," she began, surprised by the slight steadiness in her voice. "But I've been exploring what it means to break out of my self-imposed limits." The moment felt both exhilarating and terrifying, yet she pressed forward. "There's this constant feeling that I'm not enough. But I want to change that narrative." The reactions from the group were immediate and supportive, murmurings of acknowledgement filling the spaces between her words. It was a reassurance that her struggle wasn't singular, they too grappled with inner critics. "Keep going. This is what we love to hear," urged the same woman from before, her eyes bright with encouragement. Emboldened, Maria continued to articulate her journey, the walls built around her fears cracking with each revelation. As she spoke, an unexpected realization unfurled within her. This is what she craved most, to be seen, to be heard. The realization coaxed her heart towards liberation, but as the evening wore on, and the group's affirmations surrounded her, that familiar doubt crept back in a nagging whisper that questioned her worthiness. Would she ever truly belong here? Would expressing her thoughts bring relief or self-doubt? That burning question lingered in her mind, wheel spinning with relentless potential. As the session concluded, an invitation to return next week echoed in her ears, filled with the tantalizing promise of growth yet shadowed by her fears. "Are you in?" one member asked, the genuine interest making her pulse quicken. I think so," Maria replied, uncertainty creeping back as she straddled the fence between commitment and retreat. As she left the gathering, a notebook clutched tightly to her chest, she took one last look back at the vibrant group of writers, their laughter mingling with hopes and dreams. The thought paralleled her own journey. Could she truly let go of her fears and join this compelling dance of self-expression? The night faded into a deep silence as she stepped outside, her heart racing with the reflections of possibilities. Each step forward felt heavy yet thrilling, and she murmured to herself, "What if I really could share my voice with the world?" The stake was set, and a decision loomed ahead, the desire for authenticity battling against her self-doubt. Would she choose to devour the thrill of belonging, or would she retreat into the shadows once more, shackled by the voice of her inner critic? The answer would define the next chapter. Maria woke up the following morning to rays of sunlight piercing through her bedroom window, casting a warm glow over the pages of her notebook that lay open beside her on the bed. As she rubbed the sleep from her eyes, the events of the previous evening flooded her mind, igniting a mixture of excitement and apprehension. The group's laughter echoed in her ears, a contrast against her own solitude that felt increasingly suffocating. Determination steeled her resolve as she made her way to the kitchen, the familiar aroma of coffee mingling with the chill of morning air. She poured herself a cup, hoping the caffeine might bestow upon her the courage she needed. Yet, as she sat at the table, the morning light illuminating her blank page, doubt began its creeping invasion once more. What if they were right to question her? What if her words were not enough? She felt the urge to backtrack, to retreat into the comfort of obscurity. It would be easy to dismiss the invitation, to allow her insecurities to dictate her path. But as she wrapped her hands around the warm mug, she considered a different perspective. What if she could confront the voice that whispered words of inadequacy, transforming it instead into a narrative of growth and acceptance? With resolve, Maria opened her notebook, breathing in the smell of ink and paper. Instead of hesitating, she jotted down a few sentences, flashes of thoughts from the previous night's discussions. She felt compelled to explore the sensations of vulnerability and the yearning for authenticity that had swelled within her. As the words poured onto the page, each penned line felt like a step forward, a small rebellion against the self-doubt that loomed over her. A sense of ownership began to build. Her heartbeat synced with the rhythm of her writing, a steady thrum that reassured her she was on the right track. With each sentence, her intent crystallized, to write about her evolution from the shadows of anxiety to the courage bursting to escape. Yet, an unsettling thought nagged at her. What would happen when she finally shared these unfiltered reflections with the group? Would they accept her for who she was, or dismiss her offerings as naive? The anticipation of their judgment simmered just beneath the surface, demanding recognition. As she continued to write, the swirling thoughts coalesced into one critical realization: belonging was not merely about acceptance, it also required self-acceptance. The tables had turned. She realized that her perspective was as valid as anyone else's in that room. This lilt of confidence propelled her forward. Deciding that she would return to the group, she closed her notebook, feeling a sense of purpose fanning the flames of her ambition. But not without hesitation would she make her next move. Would she present her writing raw and honest, or would she refine it, strip it of its vulnerability to guard against rejection? Maria chewed her lip, caught between two worlds. A decision loomed ahead, every part of her wrestling between seemingly contradictory desires, the fierce yearning for connection and the primal instinct to protect herself from potential humiliation. Each moment stretched before her like a tightrope. She could either choose to leap into the unknown or allow the fear of falling to hold her back. As she stood up, a new revelation flickered to life. She'd been summoned to share her voice, not just for herself but for those who resonated with her fears and hopes. Determined, Maria dressed and prepared to leave. But just as she reached for her notebook, a storm of anxiety cascaded through her veins. The inner critic, emerging as fiercely as before, taunted her with all the ways this could go wrong. Shaking off the doubts, she clutched the notebook close to her chest, resolving that she would step into the ring and face that critic head-on. After all, growth resided on the other side of fear. As she walked out the door, an almost palpable energy surged through her, mingling with uncertainty. What would happen when she confronted not only her fears but the women and men whose stories had inspired her? Would this act of courage propel her to new heights, or would it unravel her entirely? Maria took a deep breath, stepping onto the path ahead, ready to test the very limits she had written about. The journey to self-realization was calling her louder than ever. Her heart raced not with dread but with anticipation for the unfolding chapters of her life. Each step marked the beginning of a defining moment, and she whispered under her breath, "This is just the beginning." And as she reached for her notebook, a thought struck her. Preparing to bare her soul would require even more than courage. It would summon something she had yet to discover within herself. Would she harness that energy to transform her doubts into powerful reflections of her journey? The dawn broke over Los Angeles, casting a golden hue across Maria's kitchen, where sunlight streamed in like the promise of new beginnings. Each ray felt like a gentle reminder that she was on the brink of something profound, not just a culinary venture, but a personal awakening that would redefine her identity. The last few days had been a dynamic blend of uncertainty and bravery, and now Maria felt the adrenaline coursing through her veins as she contemplated the writers' group meeting ahead. As she prepared for the gathering, her emotions swirled like the cups of coffee she brewed. Reflecting on her past, Maria acknowledged the tension that had tethered her to a limited identity, one that had only ever been a caregiver. Her interactions with Robert had ignited a fire within her, inspiring her to step beyond her comfort zone and embrace her ambitions fully. If she wanted to step into her clarity, she needed to present her unfiltered self to the world. Upon her arrival at the community center, the familiar chorus of eager voices tugged at her heart. The air buzzed with anticipation, an electricity that mirrored her own inner turmoil. Yet this time, as she approached, she felt something shift. Perhaps it was the newfound courage she had been building, or the acceptance that she wouldn't have to be perfect, she just needed to be. She joined the circle, a vibrant tapestry of souls ready to share their stories. The facilitator greeted her with a smile, beckoning her to recount her journey from self-doubt to self-acceptance. Maria's heart raced, the spotlight suddenly feeling palpable. But instead of allowing fear to pull her back into silence, she raised her voice, steady and clear. "I was always hesitant to explore my identity beyond just being a housekeeper or a mother. I kept suppressing my dreams, allowing fear to steer the ship." As she spoke, the faces around her were attentive, nodding with empathy. Each sentence became an affirmation she was not alone in her quest. She shared her recent culinary aspirations, describing the invitation to the charity event that had ignited her flame. "I wanted to chronicle not just my cooking but a journey toward becoming whole. To face my fears and claim me," she articulated, her conviction spilling into the space like a flowing river. The group responded with encouragement, validation echoing in the room like sunshine breaking through clouds. One member chimed in, "That's part of the artistry, we're all a work in progress. Sharing our journeys can empower others." Maria's confidence swelled, acknowledging her transformation. She was not just a listener anymore, she was a vital participant, driving her narrative forward. Soon, it was time to share her written reflections. "This is everything I've been grappling with," Maria began, careful yet emboldened. "My need for authenticity and the fear of judgment stood at odds. But I'm learning to embrace vulnerability as strength." As she read, the words resonated deeply, drawing soft gasps and smiles of recognition from her peers. She articulated her fears, regrets, and dreams, merging them into a narrative that encapsulated her evolution. That fateful moment would mark the shift in her path, no longer bound by fear, but liberated by her aspirations. As she concluded, the applause resonated through her like a wave of acceptance. In that moment, Maria realized she had not only accomplished a feat in vulnerability, but she had conquered the dragon of self-doubt standing guard over her potential. Her reflection met the warm gazes of her group, affirming that true fulfillment comes from owning one's voice, crafting one's narrative, and elevating others through shared experience. The discussions continued, weaving tales of courage and hope into a rich tapestry of support. Maria felt lighter, her burdens dissipating like fog in the sunlight. She transitioned from merely expressing herself to encouraging her fellow members to embrace their narratives too, fostering an environment where honesty ignited authenticity. As the second meeting concluded, she was met with warm embraces and words of encouragement. Each hug was a seal of validation, a promise that she was no longer invisible. Maria departed with a heart lightened and a renewed spirit, carrying with her the energy of collective resonance. In the following weeks, she prepared tirelessly for the Culinary charity event, confident in her newly adopted identity. The kitchen felt less like a place of solitude and more like a canvas for creativity. Robert watched in awe as she transformed not just ingredients, but the essence of her dreams, turning her passion into reality and redefining her role in the partnership forged from shared vulnerability. Finally, the night of the charity event arrived. Surrounded by fellow chefs and enthusiasts, the air buzzed with excitement. Maria stood at her station, apron on, heart pounding not from fear, but from exhilaration. She felt whole, her identity interwoven with purpose. As attendees sampled her creations, their smiles beamed approval and recognition, bringing tears to her eyes, a validation that rippled into every crevice of her being. Maria had achieved more than just culinary success. She had conquered self-doubt, embraced vulnerability, and emerged as a powerful embodiment of authenticity. At that moment, she realized her journey had only just begun. Each experience would further solidify her identity, enhancing her competency and recognizing her worth beyond societal labels. No longer just a housekeeper or a mother, she was Maria, an artist, a creator, and a resilient individual who had taken ownership of her aspirations. As she left the event, adorned with encouragement and a deep sense of satisfaction, Maria understood this new chapter was precisely where she was meant to be, venturing forward, continuously discovering and achieving, forging her path toward a life fully lived, one day at a time. She finally understood that the narratives that hold us back are often replaced by the stories that push us forward if only we dare to share them. You need to subscribe now to witness more transformative journeys just like Maria's, where courage meets authenticity. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and spread the word about these emotional stories. Comment below with your thoughts on Maria's journey and your own experiences with self-discovery. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to embrace their own narratives. Don't wait even one more second to support this channel and be part of this uplifting community.